It was a tense and busy afternoon at the international airport. People bustled around, dragging suitcases, clutching passports. Some laughed into phones. Others argued with airline staff. Many looked exhausted travelers from faraway places finally nearing their destination. The announcement rang loud and clear. Flight 227 to West Africa is now ready for boarding. Inside the first-class lounge, passengers lounged in cushy chairs, sipping champagne, scrolling on glowing screens. Some chatted, some dozed. Others stared blankly at news tickers. Among them sat a quiet man. He wore a simple black kaftan, the fabric elegant but understated. His shoes were spotless but not expensive. A small, worn leather bag sat by his feet. No Rolex, no designer shades, no sleek laptop bag. His face was unreadable, serene, composed, still. He said nothing. He watched everything. He held a first-class ticket, just like the others. A few passengers glanced his way once. Then again, a black man, alone in first class. No visible wealth, no high-end accessories, no arrogance or airs. He didn't look like the rest of them, but he sat there, quiet, dignified, waiting. Then came the call. First-class passengers, please proceed to Gate 4. He stood, graceful, unhurried, joined the line ahead of him. A white man in an Armani suit flashed his ticket. The gate attendant, all blonde, red lipstick, sharp as her voice, beamed at him. "Welcome aboard, sir," she said sweetly. Then she saw him. Her eyes scanned his dark skin, plain clothes, calm expression. Her smile vanished, as if someone had pulled the light from her face. She blocked him with her arm. "Excuse me, sir," she said curtly. "This lane is for first class only." He silently handed her his ticket. She stared at it, confused. Her lips moved, but her voice dropped. "Seat 2A. This must be a mistake." Her eyes flicked up to his face, then down again, judging. Then, louder. "Sir, this flight is not for someone of your color. You can't sit here." The crowd around them stilled. Conversations paused. Heads turned. He blinked once, calmly. "Excuse me," he asked, voice low, unwavering. She stepped closer, voice raised this time. "I said this flight is not for someone of your color. You must have booked economy by mistake. Or perhaps someone else used your card." A soft gasp came from a young woman behind him. A man in business wear scowled. Phones came out, trickled buttons glowing red. But Clara, her name badge gleamed, didn't stop. "Let's not waste time, sir. We'll refund your money. Now kindly step aside. You're holding up the line." He didn't move. His expression didn't flicker. "I bought a first-class ticket," he said. "Seat 2A, that's mine," she scoffed. "You can't even pronounce the name of this airline, and you think you belong in first class." A quiet stir moved through the queue. A junior flight attendant, a nervous young man in glasses, approached. "Is everything all right here?" he asked gently. Clara leaned in, voice full of scorn. "This man's trying to force his way into first class with a fake ticket." The junior attendant took the ticket and scanned it. Beep, green check mark. "It's valid," he said, blinking. Clara's face froze, then contorted in frustration. "It doesn't matter," she snapped. "Look at him. Do you really think he belongs in seat 2A? Now, 5 or 6 phones were recording. The man stepped aside momentarily, allowing a mother with a baby to pass. Then he turned back to Clara, his voice steady. "I'm not here for drama. I just want to take my seat." The junior attendant hesitated. "Clara, maybe we should. You want to lose your job over this." She hissed at him. The quiet man gave a soft sigh, then stepped forward. "I will take my seat now." Clara didn't move at first, her authority evaporating under the heat of phone cameras and murmuring passengers. Then finally, she stepped aside, but spat one last line through gritted teeth. "Don't say I didn't warn you. We'll see how long you last in that seat." He walked on, no scene, no rant, just quiet grace. Inside the aircraft, the scent of leather, cologne, and chilled air greeted him. First class gleamed. He placed his bag in the overhead compartment, sat in tour by the window, and pulled out a small notebook and pen. No anger, no scowl, not even a sigh. He began to write. Behind him, Clara entered, ignoring him now, her face flushed. She served drinks to others with fake smiles and chirpy charm. 3 rows back, a man in a dark suit adjusted his tie. François Delacour, French CEO of a multinational firm. He observed the quiet man with brief curiosity, said nothing. A soft chime rang. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing for takeoff. Please fasten your seatbelts." The engines growled to life. The quiet man closed his notebook and gazed out the window. Above the clouds, the world disappeared. But inside that plane, a storm had just begun. No one, not the French CEO, not the racist flight attendant, not even the silent passengers, knew who the man in seat 2A really was. But they would find out soon. And when they did, the shame would be unforgettable. It would echo in every corner of their memory, like a slap that never stopped ringing. Part TWO in-flight tension continued from your script, tone, and pacing maintained. As the plane sliced through the sky like a silent arrow, first class remained polished and quiet on the surface. But under the surface, tension sizzled. The man in 2A sat with his seatbelt fastened, hands folded. He didn't ask for champagne. He didn't recline like the others. He simply stared out the window, thoughtful, composed, like a man carrying 1,000 quiet stories in his bones. Clara passed through the aisle with a tray. Her smile returned for others, not for him. She reached to be where an older French woman with pearl earrings asked politely, "May I have some green tea, please?" "Of course, ma'am," Clara replied, syrupy sweet. Then her gaze flicked to the man in 2A. Her smile vanished. "What would you like to drink?" she asked flatly. "Just water, please," he replied gently. She rolled her eyes. "We have sparkling or still. Pick one. Still water is fine." She returned with a bottle, but no napkin. No eye contact. No words. She practically dropped it on the tray. Table it nearly toppled. He picked it up, calmly adjusted the cap, and took a quiet sip. Across the aisle, François Delacour watched carefully. Something about Clara's behavior disturbed him. He'd met arrogant men in boardrooms, seen cruelty dressed in expensive suits, but this wasn't arrogance. This was quiet power. Unshakable. Unshakable. Clara came again with hot towels. She skipped to her entirely. The man didn't flinch, but passengers noticed. The woman in 2B leaned over, whispered, "Why does she keep ignoring him? He's not bothering anyone." A man in 3C murmured to his wife, "Maybe she thinks he doesn't belong." They were wrong. He belonged more than anyone. And soon the entire cabin would understand why. As the aircraft cruised through the clouds. In economy, children cried, passengers laughed, and turbulence rocked the plane gently. But in first class, a storm of a different kind was building. The young male attendant who had earlier scanned the man's ticket quietly approached Clara at the front of the cabin. "Can I talk to you for a second?" he asked. Clara sighed, clearly annoyed. What now? He leaned in. You need to stop treating that man like he's invisible. People are watching. They're filming. So let them, Clara snapped, arms crossed. Let the whole world see. That seat doesn't belong to people like him. He may have bought it, but he doesn't belong here. He knows it. I know it. The junior attendant's face stiffened. You're crossing a line. No, she hissed. He crossed the line. People like him want to play royalty in spaces they don't deserve. Let them feel the pressure. Just then, the plane jolted with heavier turbulence. Passengers gripped their seats. The captain's voice came on. Ladies and gentlemen, we are passing through a mild storm. Please remain seated with seatbelts fastened. Clara strutted down the aisle, checking belts. When she reached away, she paused and leaned in with a smirk. You'd better buckle up tight. Wouldn't want you flying out of your seat. The man looked up, calm as ever. Thank you for the reminder, he replied softly. Her smirk faltered. She moved on as the turbulence passed. Lunch trays were served. Clara approached Hoa, dropped his tray with a clatter. Hope this meets your standards. He looked at the food, then at her. Thank you. His tone was steady, graceful. That was the final straw for François Delicourt, the French CEO, across the aisle. He leaned toward Clara and said quietly, Excuse me, but why are you treating him with such contempt? Clara stiffened. Sir, please stay out of this. I am involved, François said, voice sharp. I paid for peace, not to watch you mistreat a paying passenger. A few nearby passengers nodded. Someone clapped softly from the back. Clara turned and stormed to the galley. Inside, she muttered to herself, like a lion pacing in a cage. Who does he think he is? Back in seat 2A, the man closed his eyes and exhaled. He had weathered storms before, but this one was different. It was about dignity, about how silence isn't weakness, but wisdom. His hand reached into his coat. He touched a folded piece of cloth, the national emblem of his country. He didn't need to wear it. It lived in his chest. Then came the captain's voice. Cabin crew, prepare for landing. Estimated arrival in 30 minutes. The man opened his eyes. His gaze was calm, but something in the air had shifted. The weight of consequence. Outside the airport, President Ibrahim Traoré sat silently in the back seat of his official car. The airport director stood beside him, sweating, stammering through apologies. Mr. President, we are deeply sorry. If we had known, Traoré raised a hand, calm but firm. That's the problem, he said. You only care when you know. The director fell silent. Traoré's voice remained steady. I didn't fly today to test anyone. I flew as a simple man. I wanted to feel what the people feel. Now I do. He turned to the window, eyes resting on the airport building. She didn't just insult me, he continued. She insulted millions of Africans, poor and rich alike. She reminded us of how deeply racism still lives in some hearts. The director nodded quickly. She's been removed from duty. Traoré didn't he respond. His silence, heavy and full of meaning, said more than words ever could. A journalist ran forward, breathless. Mr. President, will you press charges? He turned slowly, eyes calm. No, he said. I don't need to jail anyone to make a point. The whole world saw what happened. That is enough. The cost of a moment back inside the airport, Clara sat alone. Her uniform, once crisp and full of pride, now felt like a costume she no longer deserved to wear. Her phone buzzed again and again. Hundreds of messages. Some from strangers. Some from old friends. You're trending for the worst reason. How could you say such things? I hope you're ashamed of yourself. Then came one message that broke her. I raised you better than this. I'm disappointed. Mom Clara dropped her phone. Her breath caught. Shame, heavy and hot, pressed on her chest. She wanted to cry, scream, run, but there was nowhere to go. The speech that changed a continent later that evening. A press conference unfolded outside the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. Cameras flashed. Journalists leaned forward. President Traoré stood tall in his military jacket, the national flag pinned proudly to his chest. He began, "This morning I boarded a plane as a regular passenger. I wore no title. I carried no entourage. I did not ask to be recognized." He paused, but what I received wasn't just poor service. It was hate, disrespect, shame. Not for myself, but for every person who's ever been judged by their skin, their accent, their presence in a place others think they don't belong. He looked into the camera. I want the world to understand. You don't need to be a president to be treated with respect. You only need to be a person. Applause rippled through the crowd. Some stood, some wept. I forgive her, he said, gasps. Shock, yes, he repeated. I forgive her, not because I am weak, but because the lesson has already been delivered. She has seen the consequences. Now she must choose, grow, or remain small. His final words echoed. True power is not in the title you wear, but in how you treat others. The crowd erupted into a standing ovation. Ripples of reflection across Africa, across Europe. The story spread, shared on every screen in classrooms, offices, and dinner tables. Teachers used it as a lesson. Judge no one by their appearance. Respect is the birthright of all. In her darkened room, Clara watched the speech, eyes swollen, heart cracked. One phrase lodged itself in her soul. I forgive her. It shattered her. Tears streamed freely now. For the first time, not out of guilt alone, but remorse. She picked up a pen. No camera, no PR team, just her truth. The letter, Dear President. Ibrahim Traoré, I am sorry. Not because you are a president, but because you are a human being. I failed to treat you like one. I was blinded by pride, poisoned by ignorance. You showed strength I cannot fathom. You had every right to humiliate me, but you chose grace. I will never forget this lesson. I only hope one day I can prove I've changed. Clarechet sent the letter, not knowing if he'd ever read it, but hoping that the dignity project in his sunlit office in Burkina Faso. President Traoré read Clara's handwritten apology again. No excuses, just truth, just regret, and a promise to grow. He folded the letter gently and placed it in a drawer. A knock at the door. Come in. His assistant entered, holding a stack of papers. We've received hundreds of messages, sir, support from citizens, apologies from airline staff, even drawings from children. Traoré smiled faintly. I didn't plan this. I only wanted peace that day, I know, sir. But your silence spoke louder than 1,000 speeches. Traoré turned toward the window. It's not enough to forgive. We must educate. He paused. What happened that day? It was more than a mistake. It was a mirror. He turned back. Prepare a national campaign. We'll call it the Dignity Project. Teach respect in schools. Train service teams. Promote kindness everywhere. He smiled. Let this story be more than news. let it become change. The beginning of growth in France. Clara remained suspended, but she was not idle every day. She worked at a shelter for immigrants and refugees. She cleaned, she cooked, she listened. She folded bedsheets. She served soup. One morning, while handing out blankets, she spotted a little African girl sitting quietly, shivering. Clara knelt down, wrapped a warm blanket around the child's shoulders, and smiled, not as a woman in uniform, but as a human who had finally learned what dignity means. The quietest lesson in a quiet corner of the shelter. A little girl sat alone, hugging a torn teddy bear. Her clothes were faded, her eyes large and watchful. Clara knelt beside her. "What's your name?" she asked gently. The girl looked up. "Aminata." Clara smiled. "That's a beautiful name." Aminata hesitated, then whispered, "The kids at school call me Dirty." Clara's chest tightened. 1,000 regrets knotted in her throat. She reached out slowly. "They're wrong," she said. "You're not dirty, Aminata. You're beautiful. Just like your name." That night, Clara cried again, but not from shame. This time, it was from understanding. The truth struck hard. Words could wound in ways deeper than bruises. Even in tiny hearts, the damage could linger for years. A letter with no Clara picked up her pen once more. No media, no audience, just her conscience. "Dear Mr. President, I don't expect another reply. I only wanted you to know I'm changing. Not because I was caught, but because I was wrong. Every day I meet people who remind me of you. Quiet, gentle, full of worth. I see them now, truly see them. Thank you for your silence." It shouted loud enough to wake me up. Clara, the speech that would be remembered. Months later, President Ibrahim Traoré visited a university in Ghana. The auditorium was full. Students filled every seat. Journalists pressed forward, cameras poised. He stepped onto the stage in his usual modest clothes, no medals, no grand announcements. "My story," he began, "is not special." He let the silence settle. Millions face disrespect daily, not because of what they've done, but because of what others choose to see. Skin, accent, name, appearance. He looked slowly across the room. "I was once called dirty, told I didn't belong, laughed at, not as a president, but as a man." He paused, and I stayed silent, not because I had nothing to say, but because I wanted to listen. The students leaned in. "Listen," he said again, his voice rising, "to the pain of others, to your own conscience, to that quiet voice inside that says, every person matters." Behind him, a quote appeared on the screen. "If your power makes others feel small, it is not power. It is weakness." The room erupted. Applause thundered through the hall. Some stood, others cried. The legacy of one flight. That quote was later painted on school walls across Africa, printed on t-shirts, hung in airport lounges, shared across borders. If your power makes others feel small, it is not power. It is weakness. And so, years later, people would still speak of that day. The day a flight didn't just carry passengers, but carried truth. The day a simple man from Satua taught the world what dignity truly means. The day a proud woman shattered and rebuilt her soul. The day silence roared louder than hate, and in its echo the world paused. It listened, and slowly, quietly it changed.